Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Vestanland. This is episode 25, and in this episode, I spent some time detailing some of the countryside areas as well as some of the highway and railroad system. This is a bit of a sort of like a filler episode almost, in the sense that I'm sort of doing this work so that I can connect the town of Norbakken, which I've built over the previous few episodes, sort of connected more directly with the city of Nyrstad. And then in the next few episodes, I will I'll have a couple of big distinct projects that I'm going to be working on. But it was important to get this done first, so those would look a little bit better and make a little bit more sense. Anyway, I am starting off by doing this rail overpass over the highway here. This turns out really well, I think. It looks pretty realistic, and I really do. I mean, like in terms of the detailing here, I do a lot more detailing on some of these roads and railroads, just because since there's no buildings, it's a little bit more lightweight. And yeah, it's a little bit easier to put down props, especially when the FPS isn't too bad. I'm also doing a lot of work here with kind of just like rearranging some of the railroads and highways. You'll see I'll move back to this area a little bit near the end of the episode, but I was kind of just setting up, sort of making sure all the slopes were right. Not really spending much time detailing this particular area, just because that's sort of the focus of future episodes. What we can see now I'm doing is kind of doing a little bit of sketching out where some future cities and towns are going to sit. That's like way in the future, but just wanted to get an idea of where those things are going to be, how the railroads and highways are kind of interact with those different towns. You can see I'm sort of making this kind of like big like triangle thing here, so we can have rail lines going in three directions. And yeah, that's kind of the end of the long-term planning, and now getting into the more like very specific detailing, starting out with some intersection marking tool on this kind of rural highway junction. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I kind of named some of these highways. It's nothing too complicated, but this is basically the intersection of one of the major like cross-country highways with the kind of more local road that goes to the town of Norbakken. And I spent a lot of time putting down these fillers and custom signs that really give it a lot of life and make it look really cool. You'll see that in the cinematics at the end of this episode. I always think the cinematics are really cool, but they're particularly worth watching in this episode, just because they're super satisfying and it's super interesting to see how the detailing really makes these places look super realistic. And yeah, I encourage you to stick around for those. This little junction here, it's definitely not big enough to warrant having like a full scale interchange or anything. Just a few sort of like dedicated lanes and stuff. Nothing too complicated. Now moving on to doing this railroad overpass. Again, I'm using the Railway 2 pack, which sort of these networks are super basic in the sense that like they're almost completely bare, so you can like detail them however you want. And with this particular spot, I'm doing these little like abutment things with some of these concrete walls, and these are super nice again because you can sort of like push these nodes like right up against the road and then cover up all the clipping with some surfaces and the retaining walls, and then kind of cover any like seams or weird overlaps with props and trees. And yeah, what I really like about a lot of what I do in this episode is how clearly a lot of these like railroads and roads and stuff they've been around a long time. You can sort of see how the bushes and the trees are kind of like sort of growing up right against them. Kind of how like nature is kind of just like adapting to what the people have built in this area. You can see that here with some of these trees and little shrubs and stuff. One thing I do is you might have noticed on that little clip there, some of how the ground color changes kind of in the middle of when I'm placing down trees. I ended up changing that because I was placing down so many trees. I was the ground color was getting super dark and super unrealistic. So I changed that a little bit later in the episode. I don't think I show it on camera, but that does make things look a little bit better. And yeah, adding a bunch of these, just sort of, I mean, you've heard this probably from other people in city skylines, but just covering things with trees always is the easy way out, but it always works. That's definitely what I do with a lot of these little spots, kind of just covering up the embankments with a bunch of trees. And yeah, it looks super nice. Yeah, I'm happy with how that turns out. Now this is kind of, again, like I said, we were done with the sort of future plans, but this is another one of them. I kind of created this like bypass road, which I'm imagining is going to go through 2 of these towns that I'm going to build eventually. My thought process with this was that I want the rail line to be kind of the main way that people get between these places. That's kind of the most direct route. And then the roads are more designed to kind of go around the cities. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm setting up for here. You can see the rail line going like right through where the 2 like centers of the towns will be. And then there's kind of the highway on one side and this more like local road that kind of, you know, bypasses the other direction. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea that I was going with there. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that'll kind of set up the rest of this series really well. Another thing, I do a lot of nature detailing here with the rivers. The way I built this map, just because getting like flowing water to work is so difficult in this game, I just created these rivers basically as extensions of the ocean. So like they're not actually flowing at all. But that makes it a lot easier to detail because you don't have to worry about the water like flowing and like clipping into things and stuff. Yeah, so that was kind of a cop out, I guess, but it made things a lot easier for me. You can see here, like if I was trying to do this kind of terraforming with any kind of like actually flowing stream, it'd be a nightmare. It definitely wouldn't work. So it's nice to have that kind of set up beforehand. And another thing that I do, this is based on sort of looking at Google Earth. There's clearly a lot of, with like farmland like this, there's a lot of times kind of like, you know, plots of land that haven't been farmed or developed, and there's kind of like really dense trees. I thought that was an interesting contrast between the open farmland and the really dense trees. So I tried to build some places like that here, and I think it looks pretty nice. This is like something that really worked out well, using this riverbed decal to change the texture of the bottom of the river. Adds a ton of realism, I think. You'll see a little bit later on, I changed the watercolor using Theme Mixer right here, to make it a little bit darker. And that kind of just blends everything together and makes these like close-up shots of the river look super nice and super realistic. So yeah, happy with how that turned out. I'm also adding, obviously, a lot of these little like rocks and stuff, pushing the trees right up to the edge of the water. I imagine even with these areas that are farmed, the area that's like right on the river is probably off limits for development. At least in this sort of more rural region. So yeah, making sure I add some flowers and some reeds and stuff like that, just to kind of hammer that home. I also downloaded a lot of new like grass assets, and adding those into like sort of to fill out the forest area, especially along the riverbanks, was another super useful thing that I did in terms of adding realism to this riverside area. You can see right here, these like, I think they're right, these ones are by Padelmo, and yeah, they're just super nice, and yeah, added a ton to this little region. Another thing that I add here is this pedestrian path. It kind of, as you can see, it goes over the highway, and it'll eventually it'll parallel this sort of local road and go directly into the town. I really like the idea of having this highway go like sort of all the way, or this pedestrian highway, I should say, go all the way through the country. It'd be cool to be able to like, you can sort of walk or bike, kind of thing, between any of the towns. as we go on. I haven't done it yet, but I imagine I'll connect to that pedestrian path all the way to Nyrstad eventually, which will be pretty. It's kind of a cool little detail. Yeah. So now I'm getting into the rail line detailing, adding the catenaries, using Move It to just like slide them right into place, and that kind of connected up to sort of the end of the where the train station episode in Orbach, and kind of just extending the detailing all the way to there, and then kind of again sort of getting again sort of back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, just kind of integrating the town with the kind of more rural transport network. Super helpful, I think, for the future, and just to make things look more realistic, especially with some of the cinematic shots. And it's also nice, like a lot of the these areas I had kind of just placed together, making sure they worked. And it's nice to see like them looking fairly realistic and not having weird clipping or voids or anything like that. So yeah, this was a super needed episode. It was good to fill things out. Yeah, so this is again, this is like where this pedestrian highway type thing crosses a connection between the local highway and just sort of a rural road that crosses the river. I just used kind of a concrete prop to kind of make a crossing there. And yeah, just sort of just a little small thing there. Added a few road damage decals to kind of blend in the intersection with the rest of the road, and then connected the highway, like I said, up to the kind of just like street network of the town. And yeah, that was cool. That's just a cool little detail to add. Now I'm connecting up this the fences, and again, just separating the rail line from the highway, which I think makes sense. And then sort of filling in the gaps with trees. But I wanted this whole area to look really natural, and those trees are obviously super helpful for that. This is probably the coolest part of the episode. Putting in all these custom signs. I'm using this big pack of German road signs and procedural objects, obviously, to customize them. The white one there is just obviously like a smaller sign for the local, the local town name. Whereas this is really interesting. I'm adding the highway names, as you can see on screen. The M1, M2, and M3 are sort of the three main highways that I've named so far. The M3 is kind of going east-west and doesn't go through Norbakken directly, obviously. That's what the sign was saying there. But I will that sort of intersection I was detailing in the beginning of the episode. I'm going to go there in a bit and add some of the signs, kind of showing the different. Obviously, there's only two named towns or cities on the map right now, and as we sort of go through and build more towns, there'll be more signs to add, which again is kind of a small detail in comparison to the scale of building an entire town or city, but it's super cool and super rewarding to see kind of the whole map kind of getting filled up and getting connected. That was kind of the goal of the project to begin with. So it's cool to see that come together. Another thing I'm doing here is kind of like, this is, I guess, still technically part of the town of Norbakken. I know I said in the last episode that it was finished, but I'm adding a few just kind of rural homes eventually, and sort of on the side here of this of the river, just to kind of fill things out. I don't really spend a ton of time detailing them or anything. I kind of just cover things with trees and call it a day. But I kind of stretch a road out here. I can imagine that when the sort of, maybe there were originally some farms in this area, but when they built the road and the rail line, maybe this area next to the river was kind of, I don't know, it didn't make sense to have farms here for whatever reason. So a couple of nicer homes kind of sprung up. I'm using this, I think these are all French, these assets, but then they're nice, they look a little bit, they look kind of new, but also, kind of classic. And I think they fit in this area really well. Again, I'm adding just a bunch of trees, and then you'll see that like that. I imagine that pedestrian path is probably a really popular place for people in the town, just because it's so lush. And obviously, I imagine these houses are probably pretty nice, pretty expensive. I could have spent a lot of time detailing like yards and patios and stuff, but I decided just to add fences around each of the lots, and a little bit of a driveway for each one. I think that's good enough. Again, this is not an area that you're going to see very often because it's so covered in trees, and obviously there's only like 6 houses or whatever. So yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense to kind of skimp on the detailing in this particular area. But yeah, I think it does add a lot, both kind of practically in the sense that it fills a big space with not that many props or buildings or whatever. But also it does kind of have a needed kind of nice residential area to a town like this. And then adding sort of using like different types of fences for each lot kind of also adds a little bit of variety, makes it look a little bit unique. You can see here I'm just kind of filling everything in with trees. Yeah, I really like how this little area looks. And now I'm moving on to that intersection I was talking about a little bit earlier. This sign here is the local highway, kind of intersecting with the M3. You can see if you want to go to Nyrstad, you're going to go left here, which would be west on the map. And you can see I add the little in the box there. I add M3W, I guess. No, it's M3E. M3. This is east. If you want to go to Nyrstad, you go east on this road. And then the M3W would be going the other way, which is sort of into the mountains and an as of yet unnamed town or city. But yeah, these little details are so cool to add. And then just adding a little bit of a kind of grass, like a little bit of just sort of overgrown this area. This little wall here is sort of a placeholder. I imagine whenever I build the next city over, this is probably like the extent of that city. So I was kind of just blocking it off to kind of just for my own sake, just to know that sort of area between the rail line and the pedestrian highway. It'll probably be something interesting there sometime in the future. But anyway, now I'm adding all these little signs. I obviously I don't know exactly how all these German signs work. I sort of guessed on most of them, and any inconsistencies I think you can just chalk up to Vestanland's own national road sign system, which is obviously very similar to the German ones, but isn't exactly the same, mainly because I don't know how the German system exactly works. But yeah, I think adding those little props makes a lot of sense. Just to or looks really cool. And having that pedestrian highway kind of just like emerging from the trees on the side of the river, that kind of really completes that area really well. And here are more of these PO signs. Obviously this is like if you want to go to the town of Orbach, and you hang a right here, and then if you want to continue west, you go straight through. There'll be another. I imagine when I build a town up in the mountains there, and we give that town a name, I'll come back and I'll put in the names on these signs, which will be cool. Again, I started this project with the idea of having all these towns and having all these connections, and kind of exploring all the different things that come with that. And yeah, it's super cool to see that sort of come to fruition. It took a long time to build like a big enough city and like put enough on the map to justify having these types of signs. But now that they're there, I think it's really cool. Another thing I do is I add sort of a little like village. This is like something even smaller than a village, I guess, but just like a couple farmhouses and a few shops, kind of this little like corner of road in between a few farms. This little town here. It's not even a town again. It's like a hamlet or something like that. Probably also could use a name. I don't know what it would be, but again, this is a little farming community. I kind of detailed a few of the farms here, kind of extending out from the farms I detailed in the previous episode. That kind of form the edge of Norbachen. I think I can put a few of these little villages kind of around the map just to kind of fill things out. I'm obviously not going to spend time like detailing every single farm on the map. Most of them are just going to be, as you see them now, because they'll just be looked at from afar. But yeah, a couple of these little areas just to kind of blend them in. Areas that are kind of close to the highway system. Makes sense to add a little bit of detail, a little bit of effort into them. That's what I did with this little area here. Again, just kind of mixing up the use of the little like flower tree things, some decals, some props, different colors, different textures, stuff like that. Yeah, super worth doing, I think. And again, just adding trees everywhere. These kind of highly visible areas. This is what I was talking about at the very beginning of the episode, where these kind of blocks of land are just covered in trees. Again, that's a little bit of a cop out. I said this before, because it means I don't have to detail as much. But it also does look pretty realistic, I think, to have those kind of really green, lush blocks in between the farms. It's a nice contrast. It looks realistic. Yeah, and that's good for me. Now I'm going to go through and just use the districts to kind of mark out these different places. This little town is TBD at the moment, to be determined by you guys, I guess. And then these other areas here, this is going to be, I think, a town a little bit bigger than Norbakken. Then a second city there is going to be probably the second biggest city on the map, obviously. Pretty self-explanatory what I was thinking there. And yeah, this is kind of the last part of the episode here. I'm kind of spending a little bit of time detailing this corridor between the sort of just outside the city of Nyrstad. In the next episode, I am planning on building the two major bridges, kind of finishing the one that I built in the interchange episode kind of a while ago. I didn't really build the bridge. I kind of left it for another time, and that another time is now. I'm also going to build an actual rail bridge here instead of just that kind of lane connection that I put in as a placeholder. And yeah, I think that'll be cool. I've got some ideas for assets to use. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I also kind of just mix things up here by making the rail corridor kind of straight through here, and having the highway kind of wind around a little bit. I didn't do nearly as much detailing on this little section as I did with the kind of more rural highway near Orbach, mainly because this area is going to be, I think, more developed as a sort of another city or town or suburb or whatever. So I didn't spend time detailing farms or anything, because I think down the line this will have buildings and other stuff in it. But yeah, I spent some time with the slope tool to kind of make sure those grades are realistic. And again, I'm sort of kind of making up the standard of the rail lines and the highways as I go along. Obviously, this is the M1 highway here, and I think it makes sense. This is probably probably the busiest road, I guess, in the country. It makes sense to be a little bit wider. But the country isn't going to have a ton of. Obviously, it's pretty small. It's not going to have a ton of traffic or anything. So I don't think it makes sense to have a sprawling interchange or anything like that. I want to keep the scale pretty realistic. And again, focus on the train line, making sure that's the most direct area, mainly because that's what I kind of want to build. And I'm excited to build a couple more train stations on this kind of corridor, and then having trains, eventually running from Nyrstad all around the map, stopping at the different towns that are yet to be named or built. But yeah, that's gonna be really cool. I'm just sort of finishing things up here, adding some lights and a wall to the highway there. Kind of just putting out some trees as a placeholder before I actually detail that area a little later on. Really not in this episode, but in future episodes. Yeah, as I mentioned, the cinematics in this episode are really cool, so stick around for those. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. And yeah, check out the Instagram and Discord links below. And yeah, hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye.